Welcome to another special feature on Leave a Legacy. This is about Leave a Legacy of Southeast Michigan. They're an organization here in Oakland County in Southeast Michigan that really are helping residents to realize the impact that they make on charities through planned gifts. Now, all of Michiganians generally are very charitable people during their lifetimes, but planned gifts are gifts that go beyond our lifetimes with charity. So I'm Bob Alexander. It's a pleasure to see you. I am a almost 40-year resident here of Waterford, and I am the Director of Development at Angela Hospice, and for the purpose of this conversation, I'm a volunteer with Leave a Legacy of Southeast Michigan. I am joined by two experts, two guests who know a lot about planned gifts. I'm joined by Colette O'Connor here. She is the Director of Planned Giving at Oakland University. Mm-hmm. She's part of the advancement team there for over 12 years. I'm interested in advancement. I want to talk on that in a second.
All right.
So you're specializing in planned gifts for 2 years, right? And you and your family live in Rochester Hills?
Yes, that's right.
Nice. And I'm also joined by Kress, who is the principal of Kress Consulting. He's been a philanthropy consultant for 18 years, and prior to that, development executive for 20 years. And I looked at the list of organizations that you were associated with, and that's a long list of wonderful agencies that you've had impact on. I know that many of the people in our county would recognize and appreciate the work that you've done in those organizations. Rick specializes in major and planned gifts, executive coaching, which is pretty cool, and governance for nonprofits. I want to start with just one quick, fast ground rule so that you understand. Leave a Legacy of Southeast Michigan has a couple of principles. One is we do not advocate for any particular charity or organization. We're not trying to get you to contribute specifically to any group or any particular agency. But what we do is champion the idea of planned giving, or as I said, giving beyond our lifetimes. The second thing I kind of want to touch on is just that before we talk about planned giving, I just want to talk about charity and giving in general. Probably you are a charitable person. The odds are, based on tests, that Michigan residents, including Waterfordians, are charitable people. But I just want to talk about some general principles about charitable giving, because we know how we give, but we may not know how other people give. So for the both of you, I mean, either of you have some thoughts about why people or what people give to in their charitable giving, as in their lifetimes.
Well,
yeah, please.
shall I start?
Yeah, go for it.
I think people in general give to things they believe in, things that they want to see improved.
Sure.
Things that are meaningful to them for personal reasons usually, or an association, a family reason, a child's involvement, a parent's involvement. A lot of reasons people give, and the thing that we have to keep in mind is most people give to, I believe it's 5 to 6 charities on average.
Okay.
So and maybe that's not all at the same time, but over a fairly short period of time, people give to a lot of things.
That's interesting. How about you, Rick? Do you have any insights into that?
People give for a lot of reasons, but I think it comes down to a couple. One is they believe in what you're doing, and two, they believe in who's involved.
Right.
So they may have a circle of friends or people that they respect who sort of endorse it or involve themselves.
That's an interesting point. So sometimes people are actually brought into charitable donations, charitable organizations through other friends or other people who are doing similar.
Yes, absolutely. We depend on that. Yes.
Okay, we're counting on that to happen.
Well, it's because people share the same values
Yeah.
and outlook, and so they sort of gravitate to each other.
Sure, that makes sense. Let me just talk on the other side of it, because I don't know, I mean, we give to organizations that are meaningful to us or that we've had experience with, or in some cases that we might have benefited by. I mean, they may have done something for us and we're kind of returning or paying it forward for someone.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let me talk about the organizations as well. The reason I ask this question is, do charitable contributions really make a difference to charitable organizations? And let me just explain why I'm asking the question. One is because many charitable organizations also have another source of income. They might have tuitions if they're colleges, they might have insurances if they're hospitals, they might have other things like that. So, so tell me about how charity manifests itself or makes a difference in the charitable organization.
Well, charities, another word for charities couldn't be nonprofits. And although they may have something to sell, or they may have reimbursements such as a hospital with insurance or tuition paid by students, it's a non-profit endeavor. And nonprofits exist to fill that void in society. Government provides some things, businesses and capital investment, and capitalism, we're surrounded by it, and it's a wonderful thing, but it is a business proposition. Nonprofits and charities exist because it's not supposed to be making a profit, or a service is needed or desired that isn't a money-making venture. So they are there for a reason, and donations and charitable gifts to provide the resources to keep those charities going is critical. It's absolutely essential.
Philanthropy often represents the profit in a nonprofit, meaning the money that they can put to work to invest or to increase the quality of their services a little bit. So they may have a budget this big, but philanthropy gives this much, but this makes an enormous difference.
I'll tell you what, part of what I was thinking about this morning, because I knew we would be talking today, and I thought to myself, it's interesting in your very titles, there's something about philanthropy and not-for-profit and charity that sort of rose up to me, and one was the advancement side of things, because the donation side of a school many times is called advancement. It's called the advancement, and in other institutions like mine even, it's called development. So to me, those both inform what the charity is doing, that it's influencing, or that it's adding to, right? What the normal expression of that that institution is able to provide. Would you agree with that?
I think that's accurate. I think, and actually, my department was quite recently development.
Okay.
And before that, it was relations. So, it's semantics in a way, but they're all very related terms. And I think what they do is they inform the direction you intend to go. And so by changing to university advancement, we are truly making a conscious effort to advance everything about Oakland University and our fundraising and our community.
Sure. And does development reflect the same kind of thing, Rick?
It does. It means to move forward, to develop, advance, as you say. Most nonprofit organizations have their beginning with volunteers.
Yes.
And philanthropy, that word, means voluntary giving and voluntary service for the common good. So I think we're building on a tradition of generosity that Americans and people in Michigan have.
Yeah, I hear you. Do you have the percent? Do you know what percent of people?
I recently read, I think it's 92% of Michiganders give to charity.
Okay.
That's right.
It's a high number.
It's a very high number.
It's a lot of us that are really in some form or another. It may be a kettle, it may be an offering plate, it may be an actual gift to an agency or an institution.
You buy Girl Scout cookies at the store. That's a contribution for leadership and empowerment.
And it's accidental in some cases because you're getting the Girl Scout cookies.
That's right.
Whether you really need them or not, you really want them. So you're getting something you want.
Makes me a hero at home.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Although I down a whole box on my own.
Thin Mints, right?
Yeah. Actually, the lemon ones.
Okay.
That's my weakness.
But the point is, people are very likely to be charitable and not even realize it sometimes.
Yes. That's a great point.
And so making it a conscious effort is part of what Leave a Legacy tries to do.
Right. I can tell you too, from my vantage point, where we are at Angela Hospice, that development income truly does create completely different expressions of what we do. It provides for things that we could not otherwise afford, like you say, that sort of additional amount that,
Right.
that kind of comes in after a while. Let me ask this question too, because we sort of alluded to it, and I'm saying how people give, how people donate. Like I said, well, there's a kettle, there's an offering plate, there's a whatever. So what vehicles, what devices? I mean, have you seen? Again, just in terms of charity during our lifetimes, have you seen people do this?
Well, I've had people who donate stocks that have appreciated
Okay.
because you get some extra benefits by doing that.
Okay.
I've had people bring bags of cash into the office. I don't advise that, but
The IRS prefers documentation.
yeah, a woman
Checks.
came in and wrote an enormous check one time, and I was the only person in the office way back when, and I'm stunned by the generosity, and I said, "Do you want a receipt?"
Oh, by the way.
So any kind of way you can think of, people give used clothing, they give pennies that they collect,
Yeah.
or they write checks, they use their credit cards.
Yeah.
We kind of think of it in terms of the time, talent, treasure.
Oh, yeah.
So people can give. I think I missed one of those. Which one was it? Time, talent,
No, I
treasure.
think that's it.
Did I get them all? Okay.
Yeah, that's
People
good.
can give their money. They can give their service.
Yeah.
They can make gifts with assets.
Sure.
I had just recently had a conversation about a lovely baby grand piano that is no longer needed, but we have a music school,
Yeah.
and we can always use a gently used, fabulous, very pricey instrument like that.
Sure.
So people can think of in different terms. It isn't always just cash. Sometimes people give an insurance policy they don't need any longer.
Sure.
Sometimes they make gifts of other kinds of assets for tax reasons, or just simply because they want to help you with your mission.
Right.
And that is the best way that they have to do that.
People often have many more resources than they realize because they can't write a check for it instantly.
Yes.
So their house they live in, or things that they've been saving in their IRA or whatever, though you can contribute those and do it in a smart way and help the nonprofits.
There are a lot of people, especially those over 70 and a half, and you probably know where I'm going with this, who have to make their required mandatory distributions from their IRA accounts, for example. And in the fall especially, we see a lot of people who call and say, if I take the money, I have to pay more
taxed on it,
in
right.
taxes.
Right.
So there's a thing called a qualified charitable distribution, and if you send money directly from your retirement fund, your IRA, to a charity, and it doesn't pass through your bank account,
Right.
it counts as your distribution, the qualified or mandatory
Full
distribution,
whatever it is that's coming. Or
and yet you don't pay the taxes on it. And so people can donate a portion of what they don't need,
right.
or all of it. It depends on what works for the individual.
It's a way of really maximizing a gift in that case. I mean, for somebody to take the distribution and then pay it out again, if there's a portion of that, a large portion, to not sort of have the government siphon the taxes off of
Right.
it. To give it directly, you've really elevated the power of that gift.
And what you're doing, since you mentioned the government, if you die without a will and people don't know your intentions, somebody who has no idea who you are will make decisions about how your estate will be used. And most people don't realize that or want that.
Right.
So even just having a simple will, you can include a charity in that, but you're also making sure that what's important to you
Right.
continues with what you've accumulated.
Right. I think that's the
Absolutely.
theme that sort of runs through the whole idea of charity, isn't it? We started out talking about that. People give to things that are important
That's right.
to them in some form or another. And we're kind of moving beyond the during your lifetime piece when you're talking about a will, or we're talking about things that go, things that might be, aside from that. I find it interesting that we have such a charitable people in their lifetimes, but beyond their lifetimes, that percentage number drops precipitously.
Yes,
Right?
that drops down to closer to 9% in
Right.
Michigan,
Right.
and nationally it's less. It's closer to 3.
Right.
So that's a huge difference.
It's a major
And
drop.
I think part of the reason why that happens is people don't know that how simple it actually
Yes.
is to plan for some type of charitable activity to
Right.
take place at the end.
Right, I think that's one of and nobody's ever talked about it. Don't you think it's just under the radar? I mean, really, isn't that a big?
Well, any kind of charitable gift is a planned gift because nobody says, "Oops, I made a gift." It's so putting your intentions into thought and putting it into some kind of order is really important. And being able to say, "This is what's important to me." It's also helpful for your family because very often the family doesn't know, and then they start debating, and that's not what you want people focusing on. You want them focusing on the good you've done and the legacy that you're leaving.
Well, and the things that are important to you.
Right.
Absolutely. Your values continue
Yes.
way beyond your lifetime. And just about any kind of person who's thought seriously about this, that's very satisfying to people.
Yeah. It really is. I mean, I've seen people. I've sat down with people who are thinking in those terms, and I'm quick to admit that that's not everybody because that 83 to 9% or whatever that drop happens. But people who think about it, they are lit up. Honestly,
They are, yeah.
about what they're going to be able to do in either in perpetuity, and we could talk about that if you're interested, or something just beyond. Many times, after their life, after their lifetimes, beyond what they could do during their
Right.
For sure.
lifetime.
I think people, of course, no one knows exactly how much they're going to need. And they also think that their gift maybe isn't big enough to make a big difference. Why bother with it? I mean, we hear,
I'm not Bill Gates.
I'm not Bill Gates. I don't have $25 million.
Right.
I don't have $1 million. You know,
Right.
There are most people don't feel that they fall into that category when actually at the end of their life, when they aren't going to need all the resources for an indefinite period of time, that is when people can do something.
The average gift in a charitable bequest is about $20,000. So it's not a huge amount, but I can tell you the nonprofits that I've worked with, that $20,000 means so much to them. It gives them the ability, the flexibility to do things for the people they serve.
Yeah. Right. Well, and many of those individuals couldn't have written a check for $20,000 during their lifetime.
Right, yes.
But they're only looking at their bank account. They're not looking at their full estate.
Yes.
I have heard this one thing, and I will jump in with this. I have heard people thinking like, well, you know, I'm planning for my kids. I want to be able to provide for them when I'm gone. And I think to myself, well, you're doing that now while you're alive also, and you're being charitable. So
That's right.
really, it's the same situation.
That and talking to a gift planner, someone who specializes,
That's a good point.
sometimes you can leave things to your children that cause them some
Encumber them.
issues,
It could
that
encumber
encumber
them.
them.
Yeah.
And we by no means would want anyone to not take care of their families first and foremost.
Right.
But there are conversations within families that should happen about what will happen at the end and where the assets will go. How are you going to handle the house or the retirement account or those things?
So how do people launch into this? I'm just saying, if people are sitting around and they've kind of got, well, yeah, I am a charitable person, and yeah, I should be thinking about that. So what are the first steps? I mean, what would they do if they wanted to begin that conversation or want to begin that process?
Well, they could call Colette or call me or you, and we would be glad to steer them in the right. There are many advisors and many nonprofits have programs that they can educate and give you information. What
Leave a Legacy has
Absolutely.
online resources
Yeah.
or probably written resources that would be sent out if requested.
That's right. The Plain Giving Roundtable of Southeast Michigan is another resource. And the point is not to hustle anybody, it's to say, be intentional about what you want to do. And sometimes it's hard to have that conversation with your children. The plain gifts that I've closed, many of them in boardrooms and attorneys' offices, but the best gifts, the ones I remember, are the ones that were closed at a kitchen table, because that's the kind of conversation and relationship you develop.
That's precious.
agree.
That's cool. I really love that sort of the fact that it's just so personal. I mean, that this is really an extension of any individual's care for things that are important to them. And ideally, they've got a relationship with that organization. You were saying, we were talking beforehand
Yes.
about how would people figure out what to do? Well, you
Right.
could talk to the agency that might be you
Talk
might
to
be
the-
interested in.
Right.
That's true. You could certainly talk to the agency. That most nonprofits have people like me and people like Rick who talk to people all day long about their intentions. We know that no one knows 100% for sure what is going to happen next,
Right.
and often things can be changed along the way.
That's the point. They're not locked
They're
in.
not
really.
locked in, but
That's right.
they can be changed as circumstances change. But help us help you figure out what needs
Sure.
to happen, or find an advisor who can, because
Sure.
you want to be sure your intentions happen someday, and you want to be sure that it's documented in a way that ensures it can happen someday. So communication with that charity is really important, so you have the right wording on your documents to make sure it lands in the right place.
It really isn't rocket science. It just requires some due diligence, a little bit of conversation with an organization you already care about. So
Right.
you shouldn't be intimidated calling someplace that you already support somehow.
Well, let's say it's your church or synagogue or mosque or whatever it is. Speak to the spiritual head of that organization and say, I'm interested. You're not committing to anything, and then that person can very likely connect you with somebody who can be helpful.
Sure.
Your organization probably keeps a list of professionals who you have some experience with, perhaps, that you could, if they wanted to talk to a financial advisor or an accountant
Yes.
or someone like that.
Right.
We do that in most organizations
Well, and
too.
Leave a Legacy is there to do that.
And
I
Leave a
mean, Leave a
Legacy,
Legacy
yes,
is really, again,
for
sort of
sure.
unintentionally, or intentionally not trying to guide you toward a particular charity or an agency. It's really
Right.
just trying to give you
Right.
the tools so that you can do what you want to do in your own way and in your own time. Isn't that true?
Yeah.
I am also curious, I know that this conversation is sometimes a family conversation, what somebody's going to do or what they want to do. I think there's a benefit to that.
Yes, there can be. Yes.
Because then somebody can pass on not just their support, but their values to their families. And many times that falls to the matriarch of the family.
Well, the matriarch, women control most of the disposable income in the United States, whether it's consumer choices or health care. And at some point, they will probably wind up managing the assets because they live longer than us guys. And so the matriarch, very often the values they have are what goes from one generation to another. And that includes how you use your money and your resources, what you believe in, what is really important to you.
It really is true, right? And I think that that's the thing, is that charity is really a heart thing. And I think that even as people who work with charitable people, that's kind of one of the blessings of it, is to be able to talk to people who are already selfless in and of themselves.
It's inspirational.
It is inspirational.
We get satisfaction out of having good conversations with people.
To see someone make something happen that they really have wanted to see happen, and watch the impact. It's healing in a way. I've seen that happen with gifts.
Yes.
People who maybe have made a gift then in honor of someone who's passed away, for example. I see them, they feel that finally something positive has come out of an experience that maybe has been very, very difficult. And they also, particularly where I work at a university where we have scholarships, they meet their students, they see their
Yeah.
gifts go into action in a
Yeah.
positive way.
It's exciting.
And then I've seen second generations
Yes.
continue that.
Right.
So that's where that value and that passing along that family value happens.
Right. Well, I know we're closing in on time, and I just want to make sure that we get some key information into the hands of the people in the community. I do want to talk about timing. When should somebody start thinking about doing something like this? I mean, is there a younger or older time? I mean, do you have to talk to your doctor about your life? When does somebody begin this conversation?
I think typically what starts this is people who are younger. If they're putting a will together, maybe they have children, they have a lot of different things they need to think about as far as their children and who'll care for them. I know personally that's when I did when we did the first will and trust at that time. So it's a matter of having things in order when it's right for you, but revisiting that over time because as every life event happens, children grow up, people change careers, people get older, circumstances change. Keep revisiting your plans and keep updating things because you learn along the way and you may find new charities that you wish to support in different ways.
That's right. I know a woman whose husband was a successful businessman, and he passed, and afterwards she said, you know, I supported his causes all these years. I think I want to support some that I care about right now. And whether it's business or something else, whatever is important to you, you need to make it known. And you need to make it known in a way that is responsible with what you have, what you've accumulated.
Right. It's a living document for one thing. So I mean, it doesn't turn to stone or turn into something solid until that event. So it's always changeable. It's something that really can have. And that point that you made, I distinctly remember a nephew coming to me about his aunt's will and her desire to support our agency. And I can tell you, he couldn't have been happier to basically be doing what he knew exactly that she wanted.
That's right.
That she wanted him to do.
Lots of stories like that.
Absolutely.
And our communities like Waterford and all American communities are based on that generosity and that caring through giving.
They really are. They really are. It's so personal. It's so personal and humane. It's just part of the milk of human kindness. I also, so somebody, if they wanted to do a will, they just get a hold of an attorney they might connect with?
There are a lot of resources out there, a lot of ways to do it. You can connect with your attorney. You could, some people just simply do it with a paper form.
Okay.
It's it
From
can
your
be as
state
complicated
That's going to be a fairly easy process.
or a simple process.
It's just not executed. People just don't do it. It's not about
People
that it's
don't
so
make it known.
complicated they can't.
Right.
That's true.
It's that they just don't.
They just, and no one wants to expect that they're going to need it tomorrow,
I
but
understand.
it's certainly, there's a lot of comfort in knowing that you're prepared whenever.
Yeah, experience the joy now that you've taken care of that.
Absolutely.
And actually with agencies, that's typically what happens. They want to recognize you
Yes, they do.
for the gift that will
While you're
happen
alive.
someday. They
Yes,
want
they do.
to thank you
Yes.
now.
Well, for folks who are looking for more information, they can certainly connect with Leave a Legacy. We're not going to emphasize or push any particular agency because it's all about who you connect with already. But you can get a hold of Leave a Legacy in a couple of ways. One is at leavealegacysoutheastmichigan.org, leavealegacysoutheastmichigan.org, or you can phone and talk to a real human being, a real person is there, at 888-826-7900. I'm really grateful for your attention and for the fact that we've had the chance to talk about some things that may outlive us, right? Something really particularly enduring. It's been a pleasure and a privilege to be with you, and a pleasure and a privilege to be with you guys. I really appreciate your input. I'm Bob Alexander here in Waterford, and I'll see you around the neighborhood. Thanks so much.